Every year, the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences gathers to answer one question. What is the best film of the year? That's the question that they think they're answering. But after looking at the last 17 years of Best Picture winners, I think they're actually answering a completely different one. Not which film was the best, but which film do we need to be the best right now, in this specific moment, giving everything that is happening in the world and in this industry. And those are not the same question. And once you see the difference, you cannot unsee it. Here's my argument. The Best Picture winner in almost every year of the last 2 decades is less a verdict on film quality and more a cultural thermometer. It tells you what the Academy was afraid of, what it felt guilty about, what it needed to celebrate, or what it needed to prove to itself in that exact year. And sometimes that produces the right result and sometimes it doesn't. I'm going to walk you through the evidence, and then at the end, I'm going to tell you why this matters right now in 2026 more than it ever has. Let's start with 2010, The Hurt Locker. America is fighting 2 wars it can't win and can't stop, and Kathryn Bigelow makes a film about soldiers who are so conditioned by danger that they can't exist without it. There aren't any heroes here or ideologies, just the psychology of men who've been broken by something they volunteered for. And it's also the best picture ever directed by a woman, beating James Cameron's Avatar, the highest grossing film of all time. The Academy didn't just pick the film, it made a statement, a political statement. Next, we have 2011, The King's Speech. 3 years after the financial crisis, institutions are failing and governments are also flailing, and people are desperate for the feeling of competent, stable leadership. The Academy gave the prize to a film about a king, a literal monarch, who overcomes a stammer to lead his country through its darkest hour. It is warm and safe and reassuring. The King's Speech won against The Social Network, which was sitting right there, a film about the future, and they chose instead to comfort people. 2013, Argo. The U.S.-Iran tensions are high again, and America is exhausted from Iraq and Afghanistan. And Hollywood hands the prize to a film where Hollywood itself is the hero of an international hostage crisis. And the Academy voted for a movie that made them feel patriotic and self-congratulatory in the same breath. It's really hard to beat that combination. 2014, 12 Years a Slave. The country is beginning to reckon with racial violence in a very new and public way, and Steve McQueen makes a film about American slavery that refuses to be redemptive, refuses to comfort, refuses to look away, and this is one of the cleanest wins probably on this list because it was absolutely the right film and the moment was finally ready for it. 2015, Birdman. Hollywood is in the middle of the Marvel era, and the blockbuster has eaten everything. All indie films have been eaten by the blockbuster. And the Academy is terrified of irrelevance. And so it votes for films that are literally about fear. Birdman is a movie about an actor who used to be a superhero trying to be taken seriously as an artist. And the Academy voted for a film about people exactly like themselves, scared of losing the thing that makes them feel important. 2017, Moonlight. The year before, the hashtag #OscarsSoWhite forced the institution to reckon with how white and how male its membership was. And in response, the Academy mass expanded its voting body. Moonlight is a masterpiece on its own terms, and I want to be clear about that. But the cultural pressure of that moment means the win will always carry the weight of what the institution needed to prove. Both things can be true. The right film won, and it won, and maybe it partly won because the Academy needed to show that it changed, despite the fact that it brought up La La Land. And we won't even get into how bad that writing is. 2018, The Shape of Water. This is the year after Trump's inauguration, and Hollywood is processing its alienation from political power. Guillermo del Toro makes a fantasy about a woman who falls in love with something the powerful call a monster. The monster is the hero. The government is the villain. The Academy voted for exactly the story that it needed to tell about itself. It thinks that it's the hero. 2019, The Green Book. This is probably the most instructive failure on this list. The national conversation about race was extremely heightened, and it would continue to be so in the years that follow. The Academy wants to demonstrate that it cares, and it chooses a period piece directed by a white filmmaker about a racist Italian-American who becomes friends with a black pianist, a film the subject's own family said misrepresented him. Black Klansmen, Roma, and The Favorite were all in that race, and they chose the most comfortable option available. 2020, Parasite. Bong Joon-ho makes a film about a poor family and a rich family and what happens when desperation meets comfort. It wins the Best Picture, the first non-English film ever to do so. The movie was released and awarded just before the pandemic, and it captures an anxiety that was already everywhere and has only been exacerbated. The sense that the gap between people at the top and everyone else has become a different kind of country entirely. 2021, Nomadland. We are in the middle of COVID. People are isolated. They are economically terrified. Things aren't going well. Chloe Zhao makes a film about people living in vans moving through the country that has no place for them. It shouldn't have been a mainstream awards film, but in that moment, its specific loneliness felt like a documentary about where everyone feared that they were headed. 2022, Coda. Still in COVID, the world is desperate for warmth. Coda is small and heartfelt, independent film about a hearing daughter of deaf parents finding her voice. And it's almost aggressively kind. It gave the Academy and audiences exactly what they needed emotionally in that exact moment. I argue that it's one of the most of its moments wins in recent memory. 2023, Everything Everywhere All at Once. Post-pandemic, terminally online, drowning in content and grief and noise. The Daniels make a film that names that feeling exactly. Chaos as premise, empathy as the only answer. It didn't just capture the cultural moment, it was the cultural moment. One of the cleaner wins on this list, honestly. 2024, ChatGPT comes out. Oppenheimer wins. AI is accelerating, geopolitical tensions are rising, the nuclear question is back. Christopher Nolan makes a film about a man who built a bomb he couldn't control. In 2024, that story landed differently than it would have in any other decade. The Academy was processing civilizational dread and needed a film serious enough to hold that angst. 2025, Anora. Sean Baker's chaotic, darkly funny screwball about a class and transactional relationships. It's high energy, it's fractured, it's uncomfortable. It reflects a post-pandemic world that we've been living in where the social contract feels openly broken. The Academy reached for something alive and kinetic, a film that felt like the cultural noise of the moment. So that's a pattern. 17 years, and in almost every case, you can draw a straight line from the winner to the anxiety, the guilt, the need, or the fear that defined a specific year. And sometimes the pattern produces the right result. Parasite, Moonlight, Everything Everywhere, The Hurt Locker, great films that also happen to be what the moment needed, and sometimes it doesn't. Green Book, The King's Speech over the Social Network, Argo's self-congratulation dressed up as history. The pattern itself is neither good nor bad, it just is. The Oscars have always been a mirror and not necessarily a verdict, which brings me to 2026. This year, two films dominated the conversation from the moment they were released. One Battle After Another, which was Paul Thomas Anderson's elliptical, chapter-structured, capital A, ambitious film, formally demanding the kind of film that film people call serious. And Sinners, Ryan Coogler's black horror musical period piece about the origins of American music, about brotherhood, about the cost of joy under racial terror, a film that genuinely doesn't have a genre address in a film unlike anything I can point to. One Battle After Another won, and I spent the last month watching nearly 20 hours of analysis, essays, and video breakdowns explaining why it deserved to win. I still am not convinced, and I think if you've been paying attention to the pattern I've just showed you, you already know why. And in 2026, what the Academy needed to believe was that serious filmmakers making serious films still matter, that prestige is real, and the kind of cinema they have always championed has not been made irrelevant. And Sinners didn't make them feel that, apparently. One Battle After Another did, so that's what won. And so I can't just stop there. In the next video, I'm going to make the case, point by point, for why Sinners is actually the better film and why the 20 hours of analysis and articles I watched failed to change my mind. And what it tells us is that the Academy couldn't bring itself to give the prize to something that was genuinely new, original, and moving. So we'll see you in the next video. Thanks, y'all.